Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Hey, welcome back to Love and Abuse. If you've not heard the first episode, that describes exactly what we're talking about over here at the Love and Abuse podcast. It's all about emotional abuse, manipulation, deceptive language, deceptive words, anything that someone does to unethically or immorally influence you using their language, using their behavior. And I'm here to help educate you so that you don't get sucked into some trap. And that could be a relationship trap. You could be locked into a relationship that turns bad. You know, the word abuse comes up in the words emotional abuse, and people don't think that their relationship is abusive because my partner or my friend or my coworker or my boss, they're just a nice person. So how could they possibly be being abusive? I know what abuse is. Abuse is leaving marks on my body. Abuse is shoving me. Abuse is so many other things, but it has not been told enough how much emotional abuse leaves scars. I don't mean physical scars. I just mean when you are dealing with someone who is doing any type of manipulation or emotional abuse or trying to con you in some way, it leaves emotional scars. You have feelings about it. And if you're in a romantic relationship with someone like that, it's a continuous thing. It's a long, drawn-out process that you continue to get exposed to day after day after day, but it's very hard to pinpoint without the context of the long haul. So if I were to take a day out of someone experiencing emotional abuse, if I were to take a day out of their lives and look at what their partner's doing, almost everyone on the outside would think, well, their partner's not so bad. I don't see anything wrong with what they're doing. I might even do what they're doing. And that's the trouble with emotionally abusive relationships, is that we could get into a situation that no one else recognizes is abusive. So this show is all about helping you recognize what emotional abuse, verbal abuse, manipulation, coercion, bad behavior in general is, so that you are prepared, so that you are armed with knowledge, so that when you go out into the world or when you experience your family at the next get-together or the family you live with now, that you understand a lot more about yourself than you did before, so that you don't get sucked into that cycle, you don't get trapped, and it's not a continuous degradation and depreciation and diminishing and dissolving. Pick a D word. All of these things that happen to you, that happen to your soul, that happen to your spirit. Now, this isn't the same thing when you're dealing with a salesperson and they're trying to con you. Not all salespeople do this. Most of them don't. But there are some salespeople out there that are just so driven to make the sale that they'll say anything to get you to buy. Again, I'm not making fun of salespeople. I've been there. It's a noble profession, absolutely. But there are some people that are so driven by money, that are so driven by that profit, that they will do anything to get you to buy. And so they will just tell you things that are plain wrong, just so you'll sign the document, just so you'll hand over the money. And that's different than a relationship that has manipulation or deception. That's different because you see this person once and then you're gone. I was talking about an event that happened to me on my other show, The Overwhelmed Brain, where I walked into a music store and the salesperson that I've always dealt with, nice guy, I think, and I walked up to the counter and I was purchasing something and he throws in some extended warranty. And he fast talked me into thinking that, this is all part of the normal pricing. You get the 2-year warranty, $37. And he just kept talking and talking. And I was like, wait. Stop for a second. What is this extra money on my bill here? He goes, oh, that's the 2-year warranty. Well, I said, I didn't want that 2-year warranty, and you just threw it in there. I said, I never agreed to that. And I told him, because it is a place of personal boundaries that were being violated and values that were being violated, I told him that is unethical, and I don't appreciate that you added that to my charge. And he just stopped and went, I'm sorry. And he didn't know how to respond. And it wasn't like I caught him in a fluke or something, or he misunderstood something I said. This was a buildup over time that I had been there several times to purchase things. And I noticed how he tried to throw things in there. He always tried to sell me the highest priced product, even if I didn't need it. It just felt coercive. It felt like he was influencing me in an unethical way. And when that kind of builds up inside of you and you have these feelings of doubt, your instincts are kicking in and the hair on the back of your neck might be raising, like something's going on here, but I just can't prove it. I just can't figure it out. And then you finally catch someone red-handed and everything is substantiated, and now you have to face the moment where you either address it or you don't. And in a lot of relationships, and this is the difference I'm talking about, a lot of relationships, we get to that moment where we finally catch someone red-handed and we can choose to say something or not. Hopefully we do. Hopefully you do say something when the appearance of a red flag comes up, so that you don't swallow it and diminish it and invalidate yourself and make yourself think that perhaps I'm misunderstanding. Because that's what happens. This is my main point of this episode, is that we overlook the red flags when they first start. I overlooked the red flags when I first started dealing with this salesperson, and because he was convincing and he seemed nice, and why would he want to screw me over? Why would he want to manipulate me? And it turns out that my suspicions were right. And so I did have my gauge on, my radar on when I worked with him. So I still, I was still cordial and civil with him, but I had my radar on. And I think that's important. When you detect any red flag, keep your radar on. Keep your observation skills tuned, because you need to know if something else happens, that it is the compound effect of what continues to happen if you don't nip it in the bud, if you don't address it right away. It's so important to address the red flags right away. And someone who's very skilled at manipulating you will explain away and rationalize the red flags. And you still have to be very careful then, because more likely than not, the red flag is real and it will happen again. And if you do go through the process of diminishing yourself and invalidating yourself and just thinking, well, it's probably a fluke. Well, maybe he or she didn't mean that. Well, I don't see them as that person, so maybe I'm just perceiving this incorrectly. It's okay to dive in and trust yourself and say something and be aware that this is something that maybe you don't want in your life. And that's very helpful for you to keep in mind in any situation, in any conversation, because what's going to happen is that if you let that go then what happens is the other person realizes, hey, the first time it worked, the second time it should too. And I'll just explain it away again. But we get sucked in. We get sucked in with our emotions. I mean, not with the salesperson, but with, in my case, but with our emotions in relationships. We get sucked in and we think, wow, we love them and we are compassionate and we want them to be happy. And of course, they wouldn't manipulate us. My point with this episode is to stay aware of the red flags. Be aware that when the red flag comes up, that you turn on your red flag radar and make sure that you stay observant. You become highly attuned to what is going on, so that if it happens again and you can substantiate the first red flag, then, it might be time to say something. I like to say something on the first red flag. I didn't do so with the salesperson because it was just too cleverly disguised. I couldn't really tell. And that's what happens to us, is that we can't really tell sometimes. But always trust your instincts, because even if you're wrong, at least when you do mention something and say, hey, look, when you said that, this is what it seems like is happening to me, and it doesn't feel right. Whatever words you use. But when you experience some sort of red flag, I want you to either address it or file it in a way that you can bring it up again just in case it happens again, and then you can say something. Just don't let too many pass by, because then you're going to turn into someone that I talked to not too long ago, coaching client, that saw so many red flags so many years ago and just kept dismissing them. And when every time you dismiss them, you dismiss yourself. Don't dismiss yourself, because you're going to get into a situation that you're not going to be happy in when those red flags continue, and everything that you're experiencing is another chink in your emotional armor. It's another way of disintegrating who you are. And pretty soon you end up in a relationship that takes years to recover from. And you might still be in the relationship today, and you can't figure out how to get out, because you lose all the confidence you have in yourself. You lose the ability to be able to make good decisions because you don't trust your own decisions anymore. So we're going to talk about that in future episodes. If you're in deep and you're not sure how to get out, we're going to talk about a lot of terminology in this show, because I need you to know terms like breadcrumbing and silent treatment, which I'm sure you're familiar with, triangulation, isolation, minimizing, intimidation. You know all these terms, but boy, when they're put in the context of manipulation, emotional abuse, coercion, bad behavior in general, and you're involved with somebody doing that to you, sometimes we can't see outside ourselves to see what's happening. So it's vital that you know these terms and understand the concepts behind them, and understand everything that might be happening in the relationships that you have in your life, so that you don't get bamboozled. Like I almost did that day when that salesperson tried to add that charge, and he was like, I'm sorry. And I said, that's fine. Just, take the charge off. And I told my girlfriend as I was walking out, our friend, the salesperson, just tried to screw me over. I forget if I used those words. I might have been more upset. I might have said other things, but I said, that guy just tried to scam me. And the store lost out because, I didn't want to go back there anymore because I didn't want to deal with that guy again. So I actually did go back one more time, and I did see him, and he was like, hey, how you doing? And it was like nothing to him. But now there was that awkward tension, which is why some people don't want to mention anything. They don't want to create an awkward tension. They don't want to create uncomfortable communication between each other. So they might not mention it. And I hope that as you listen to this show more and more, that you get more comfortable in making those uncomfortable situations. Not that it becomes uncomfortable with everything you mention to everyone every time they do something, because you become more confident in yourself and you understand your boundaries and what you will accept and won't accept, and you understand your values and what's important to you. For example, what's important to me is that people are honest to me and they respect me. And I find what he did a sign of disrespect. And I made it clear that that's what it was. And maybe he changed his behavior, or maybe not. Maybe it's something they teach in their sales training, and it's not him at all. It's just what he is passing down. But I wanted to make sure that he knew that I did not accept that behavior. And I want you to be there too. I want you to be in a space where you let people know that you won't accept certain behaviors. Watch for those red flags. Thanks for listening today. This is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook over at loveandabuse.com. The Mean Workbook is an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. And consider this podcast as one of the resources, one of the addendums to that workbook. You don't need the workbook to listen to the show, but it's really helpful if you want to assess your relationship and figure out if you're experiencing any type of emotional abuse, and at what level, and what you can do about it, and how you can heal from it, just in case you're in that space. Thank you again for joining me. We'll talk to you soon.